Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'll be doing my October wrap-up. I got through quite a few books this month. I did 13 overall, some audiobooks, graphic novels, manga, things like that. All kind of with a horror, ghostly kind of theme to it. So let's just jump right in. First one was Doctor Who, Touched by an Angel. This is by Jonathan Morris. I actually listened to this on audio, and I thought it was a fantastic story. In terms of the ghostliness to it or the creepiness of it, we have the Weeping Angels in this particular series, the stone-like creatures that if you blink or look away, they can advance, and if they touch you, they suck the life, like the remaining life force from you and send you back in time. And in this particular one, we meet a fellow named Mark, who I think it's 8 years earlier, his wife was killed in a road accident, and he encounters the Weeping Angels and is sort of sent back in time, but in this case not very far. He's still within his own timeline. And he's given this envelope that says you can save her and all these like instructions and things. Now the thing is, the doctor, our 10th doctor here, 11th doctor, Matt Smith, he comes to find out about the situation through kind of ripples in time. He knows something's up, and there's potential for a paradox to take place, because if Mark changes something in his past, he will change his future, and that would change the events of him even going back in time, and all sorts of craziness can happen. So I think the Weeping Angels are sort of hoping a paradox will take place because they can feed off that energy, and it's sort of a race against time to stop him from changing things irrevocably, because he could destroy the world. The audio version and the book version itself did a remarkable job of portraying the 11th Doctor and Amy and Rory and their characters, and the narrator who did the audiobook I think did a fantastic job, and I gave this 5 stars. I read The Suffering by Rin Chupeco. This is the second book in the Girl from the Well series, about a vengeful spirit named Okiku, who was killed by a serial killer, like drowned in a well some like 300 years ago, and she's been roaming the earth, kind of seeking vengeance against other killers. In the first book, she encounters a young boy by the name of Tark. He's 17 years old. She senses he's going to be a potential victim, but there's also something very dark within him, and I think in the first book there's something to deal with possession and stuff like that, but as the second book kind of opens up, Tark and Okiku now have sort of this relationship where they sort of go together to help kill off these serial killers and things like that. So they work together with their abilities and things. And as this particular book opens up, Tark every year kind of goes back and visits family and friends in Japan, and he's planning on a visit there. And he comes to learn that one of his friends has disappeared in the Aokigahara forest. She was leading a group of ghost hunters through the woods to uncover this supposed mythological village that's there. And the Aokigahara forest is known as Japanese suicide forest. This place actually exists. And that kind of what drew me to this book as well, because I had recently read a book about that particular locale. This one took a little while to get going. I say about halfway through is when you finally reach the forest. The relationship between Tark and Okiku is just a bit odd to me. It seems like with the ghosts, it was more spooky and scary in the first book. This one, she seems to talk. She's able to interact with him and move things and touch things, and it almost seems like she's less ghost-like in this one, if that makes sense. But still a very good story. I still really enjoyed this one, but I only gave this one 4 stars. Then I listened to an audiobook by Daniel Kraus entitled Scowler. Oops, got that out there. This is a very, very dark and disturbing book. It's told from the point of view of a young man. He's about, I think, 18 at this point, by the name of Rai. He lives with his younger sister and mom on a farm that was built by his dad, who at the start of this book is in prison. He was physically and emotionally abusive to the family, particularly Rai's mom. It is told in very detailed and disturbing language, so if this is something that would be triggering for you, it might be a book to avoid. Daniel Kraus doesn't mince words. He goes right to the heart and just lays it right out there to the point where you feel like your skin's crawling as you're reading some of these things. I previously listened to his book Rotters, about a father who's a grave robber who starts to kind of train his son in the ways of grave robbers, and again, equally disturbing, not something you want to be eating and reading at the same time, but the detail of it, it's sort of, you're just compelled to kind of want to find out more about it. This story also has something about a meteor strike that's about to take place, and the book is told over a course of a few days, one leading up to the strike and then after, and during that time, Rai's father, who had been in prison, manages to escape and return to the farm. So it's sort of dealing with this whole situation, and lots of flashbacks to what happened to the just before the father gets arrested the first time, and how Rye kind of turns towards like these three childhood saviors, you might call it, protectors that he that gives him like hope and helps him bolster his courage and things like that. One is Mr. Furrington, one is a toy statue of Jesus, and then one is a sort of mangled character called, that her nicknamed Scowler, hence the name of the book. But very well told, very dark, like I said, and disturbing. And I gave that one overall 4 stars. Then I read the second volume of Coffin Hill. This is by Caitlin Kittredge and various other people. This is called Dark Endeavors. It's about a young woman named Eve. Her ancestral home is called Coffin Hill. In the first book, we come to learn that she comes sort of from a family of witches, and she stumbled across a book of spells, and without permission kind of took the book, went off with some friends into the woods, and tried to perform a spell, and unleashed some horror. Years later, she ended up becoming a police officer, and as a rookie cop, she solves some, helps catch or stop some brutal serial killer, but shortly after retires from the force and goes back home to try and kind of, I guess, fix the mistake she unleashed back then. But what's troublesome about this, and I had a hard time following, is it just keeps jumping around in time from 2012 to now to, I think there's another earlier time, 1970. You're literally bouncing all over the place, and it's difficult to follow the storyline. The artwork is really good. That's what drew me to it in the first place, and it can be quite dark and gruesome in some images. And I'll show you these right off the bat. I mean, that looks super scary right away. That's what drew me to the story, and it sounded intriguing, but I couldn't keep up with all the jumping around in time. It just got too confusing. I only gave it 2 stars. I don't know that I will continue with this series. Then I read The Man in the Picture by Susan Hill, small little gothic ghost story. I absolutely love her work. Of course, the author of The Woman in Black, which I think was a much better book than this, but this was still enjoyable. We follow Oliver, a young man who returns to Cambridge to kind of meet up with an old professor. He sees this painting of masked revelers at a Venetian carnival and is intrigued by the picture. There's something that draws him to it. And his professor kind of warns him not to stare too deeply into the picture because it has an ability to kind of entrap people within it. It doesn't merely mimic life. And he begins to tell him this tale about how he encountered the picture and all these strange events that have followed it. And it was pretty creepy, pretty good story overall, great gothic kind of feel to it. And I definitely would recommend this for people who are fans of her work, and I get 4 stars. Then another graphic novel I read was Sheltered, Volume 3, the final book, which collects issues 11 through 15, and this is by, I think it's Johnny Christmas, co-created and illustrated, also written by Ed Bryson. This is about a group of survivalists that create this town called Safe Haven out in the woods. They believe a volcano in Yellowstone is going to erupt, and they are preparing for this. And in the first book, something really unbelievable happens. Someone makes this decision, this event takes place, and it was very shocking. And I'm not going to go into spoilers about it and everything, but the second book kind of deals with outsiders kind of getting too close to the town, finding out about what's going on, and a couple kids within the group of the town are trying to get out and everything, and that was still fairly interesting. But this one is sort of, there was like nowhere else for it to go. Enough with the unbelievable event that takes place in the first book, which I can't see it ever, something like that happening. There were no more surprises left for this. There was nowhere to go. Everything was very predictable, including the very last scene in the book. You just kind of knew that was going to happen. And overall, it was a big letdown, a big disappointment. I gave it 2 stars.